You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Teahan. In addition to this show, I write for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV. And Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, round one in the books. And the Packers, they go offensive line, but I know there's something you want to mention first.
Yeah, I do, Gil, and I got a lot to talk about with the draft. But before we get talking about the draft, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com. That is theticketking.com, or visit their locations in Green Bay or Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packer game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. And Gil, yeah, of course, we were talking about the potential of the Packers trading up or trading out of round one. Brian Gutekunst mentioning in his pre-draft presser that he'd like to get as many picks as possible. So, of course, what happens? He stays put number 25, and he drafts an offensive line, which fills a pretty big need for the Green Bay Packers coming up in 2024.
Yeah, no doubt. And the pick is Jordan Morgan, who played left tackle at Arizona, but a lot of scouts are saying he is most likely a guard in the NFL. He's got the arms that are a little bit shorter than the Packers prefer at the tackle position. And so I guess the question becomes, like, are you actually now still moving Zach Tom to center, or you sticking with Zach Tom and going with Jordan Morgan, competing with Sean Ryan at right guard? And we may not know the full answer to any of those questions until after this draft is finished.
We may not know until week one, honestly,
right.
leading up into week one and after training camp and preseason. But, hey, you know who also had short arms was Zach Tom. Brian Bulaga also had short arms. Both have been pretty damn good. Brian Bulaga was a pretty damn good offensive tackle in the NFL for a long time, and Zach Tom was probably the Packers' best offensive lineman last year, in my opinion. But more information about Jordan Morgan, though. 22 years old. He's 6'5", 311 pounds, which is ironically the same exact height and weight that Elton Jenkins, my boy Elton Jenkins, is listed at. And I'm telling you, if he could be half the talent that Elton Jenkins is, I'm going to be very, very happy about this pick down the road. But like you said, he was an offensive tackle in college, 37 starts for Arizona at left tackle, but he projects as a guard due to those shorter arms and a little bit smaller for your prototypical NFL tackle. That relative athletic score, you know, Gil, the Packers, they love to draft guys high with high relative athletic scores. Well, Jordan Morgan had a 9.0 out of 10, so pretty darn good. Allowed only 2 sacks last year at Arizona, 14 pressures allowed. He's got some massive hands, too. 10 and 7/8 inches, and that's, just under 11 inches. Those are bigger hands than Jordan Love, which when the Packers measure quarterbacks historically, they like quarterbacks with big hands who can grip that football. Jordan Morgan, he gets his paws in some opponents, and it could be a very good thing for the Packers offense in general. This is a guy where initially it was picked. The pick was delivered. It was announced on television, and I was just thinking, okay. I was thinking maybe Graham Barton because of his versatility, but Jordan Morgan may provide a lot of versatility as well, Gil, which is what Brian Gutekunst clearly strives for when he's building an offensive line.
Yeah, and I like the versatility, the fact that he could go inside to guard, probably on either side. Played left tackle in college, more likely to be right tackle in the NFL if he stays at tackle. But again, we'll see. Smart player, a leader. He was a captain, Captain Morgan, if you will, in college. So, the check's in the mail. We'll see, what kind of leadership he can add at the NFL level once he gets a little bit more experience. But, I like a lot of the things that he brings to the table. Pretty good run blocker, although one issue that we have with Morgan, he needs to get a little bit stronger, and that's both for run blocking and pass blocking. And you got to hope that the new strength and conditioning coach can help that along, as well as the offensive line coach.
Something that caught my attention too, report that he tore his ACL at Arizona late 2022, but he worked his butt off and came back in 2023. The guy is supposedly, he's a workout warrior. Like you said, Captain Morgan, he's got a little captain in him. And the thing is with Jordan Morgan, all I think is when Elton Jenkins tore his ACL and he worked his butt off to get back for the 2022 season a few years ago after he tore his ACL in 2021. This is a clone of Elton Jenkins, it sounds like, and it's very clear the Packers have a type when they're looking for offensive linemen. And again, the big thing is, Graham Barton was the guy who we were talking about, one of our crushes, where the guy could play center, he could play guard, he could possibly play tackle. Well, Jordan Morgan could play a little bit of guard and tackle. It sounds like he, at the NFL level, that he'll be able to do that. And when you're putting together an offensive line, you don't want the two best offensive tackles. You don't want the two best guards. You don't want your best center. You want your five best players on the offensive line. Plain and simple. You want your five best players, and you try to make it work with those five. And having that versatility is just going to be so crucial and significant. It's going to make for a hell of a battle up front during training camp, Gil.
It is. And I love the versatility, because that way you can get your best five. I mean, think about this. Zach Tom and Elton Jenkins can play all five positions across the offensive line if necessary. Mm-hmm. You've now added Captain Morgan here, who can play both tackle and guard. Even Josh Myers can play guard as well as center. So you've got a lot of options as far as finding, that five guys that you think are going to be the best starters. I like that. And I'll tell you something else. Brian Gutekunst is not done adding offensive linemen in this draft.
Oh, he better not be. This is a great start. This is a great start. And if they do project him to be in the interior, that's where they just need the most depth possible. I mean, obviously you can move Zach Tom inside. Elton Jenkins is a terrific player, but those guys can't do it by themselves. Sean Ryan showed some flashes last year, but we don't know if he's really the long-term answer at the other guard spot. So it's good to have that you did this. I don't think they're even close to being done as well, but it's kind of funny if you're watching the broadcast, the ESPN broadcast, they showed that fan in the cheesehead who's like, who is this guy? He was clearly upset, and Lions fans were clowning him. The draft pick of Detroit Lions fans were clowning him and laughing at him because he just was really upset about the pick. But it's a matter of, you got to trust the front office with this. You have to trust the guys in charge who do this for a living, not the bloggers, not even us, who we like to think we have a decent idea of what the Packers are looking at or who we would like to see them get. You just got to trust the front office at this point, Gil. On paper right now, reading more into it, this sounds like it's not a sexy pick, but it sounds like a really, really good addition for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, solid pick, smart guy, leadership ability, versatility, athleticism. Worked hard to overcome the injury. Even he was a track star in high school too, which is pretty interesting and pretty hard to believe for your average offensive lineman in the NFL. So that's pretty good. And to me, it's a solid pick. And if you look at the last few years, especially the last 2 years draft, I think Brian Gutekunst has earned the benefit of the doubt coming into, what we're seeing. So trust the process, I think. I mean, feel free to criticize if you want, but I think Brian Gutekunst has earned the benefit of the doubt as far as trusting the process and seeing where this goes.
Even the guys on ESPN who have clowned and been critical of the Packers for not picking a wide receiver in the first round for many, many years, even though they found great talent later in the draft on days 2 and 3, even they were, when the Packer fan had that reaction, bending his head down and being upset, was like, hey, chill, man. Like, they probably know what they're doing. Even they were saying, like, come on, like, just relax a little bit. But the big thing also with this is that he is a worker, obviously. And that's what I really like. That's what I like hearing and everything. Another little thing worth mentioning that I read also, he's a big horror movie guy. He has tattoos of Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers and Pennywise. And if he becomes a really good player, he's going to be a fan favorite in a hurry. All I thought when I heard that, Gil, was there was an old video from when Frank Winters, Don Beebe, and Brett Favre were with the Packers, and they went Halloween trick-or-treating, and they acted like teenagers, and they had masks on, and they went to Mike Holmgren's house, and they were just messing with Mike Holmgren on Halloween. I feel like Jordan Morgan, it'd be pretty easy to sniff a 6'5", 300-pound guy out, maybe at your doorstep, but I feel like he could be a very, very popular guy in Green Bay come around Halloween time.
Yeah, I think that could be, and I don't want to know where on his body those tattoos are, but
I don't either.
No, but it's interesting to know.
And then another thing worth mentioning too, Jordan Morgan did grow 6 inches in high school. He had a big growth spurt, and the Packers seem to like these guys. Brian Gutekunst seems to like these guys who develop later and who essentially grow into their bodies and feel like they could grow more into their bodies. That was a big thing that drew him to Rashawn Gary, where they felt like he had room to get bigger and stronger. Lucas Van Ness, another guy, big frame, could get big and strong. Brian Gutekunst has made a point, especially guys up front. He wants guys who he feels has room to grow and still get stronger and has not maxed out the potential, at least early in the draft. Historically, he has appeared to do that.
Yeah, and so far it's worked out pretty well. So let's hope that pattern does indeed continue. And, it's curious because a lot of the guys who everyone was saying the Packers should take this guy, the Packers will take this guy, they were still on the board.
Yeah.
And that's not where they went.
And it was interesting where Terrion Arnold, the corner from Alabama, would have been a really nice pick. Kudos to the Detroit Lions for trading up ahead of Green Bay and picking him, because I feel like that would have been that kind of perfect ideal corner that Jeff Hafley would want in his new defensive scheme in Green Bay, where the Lions needed a corner. They needed depth at corner, especially if you're going to be going against Jordan Love and those Packer receivers and tight ends. You're going to need as many DBs as possible to defend that passing offense, because the Packers, they look like a dangerous group that just started to figure it out at the end of last year, and you need guys who can defend. So credit to Detroit right there, getting Terrion Arnold. I thought he would have been a great Packer pick. But Jordan Morgan, overall, after looking into it more and more, I'm pretty satisfied with this pick. I thought it'd be Graham Barton if they would go with the offensive lineman. Of course, he went the very next pick, number 26, to Tampa Bay, because go figure, that's how it goes. But I think overall a solid draft choice by the Packers.
Yeah, solid draft choice. Good start to this draft. You're addressing a major need, and a guy who fits all the parameters that the Packers look for. Now it's just a question of seeing what happens when he gets on the field, and we will start that process pretty darn soon.
Protect Jordan Love at all costs. That's what this pick pretty much said, is that they're going to do whatever they can to protect their new franchise quarterback. But we mentioned in the previous episodes leading up to the draft, our draft crushes, Gil. A few guys who we mentioned. I had mentioned Texas defensive lineman Byron Murphy II. He slipped a little bit. I thought he was going to go top 10. He ended up going number 16 to Seattle, which is a spot where if the Packers are going to trade up, they have trade history with the Seattle Seahawks. John Schneider, Brian Gutekunst's buddy, being the longtime general manager of the Seahawks. That could have been a possible move right there if the Packers really love Byron Murphy, but he lands in Seattle. We mentioned Graham Barton. He ended up going number 26, the pick right after Green Bay to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But few guys who we mentioned, Kansas State offensive lineman Cooper Beebe, he's still available. He was projected to be round 2, round 3, a day 2 pick essentially. So he's still available if you want to add interior depth on Friday. Peyton Wilson, the off-ball linebacker for NC State, he wasn't drafted tonight. Not surprising. He's dealt with some injuries in the past. He's a little bit older, but the guy plays with his hair on fire, which I think he would be an excellent day 2 pick coming up. Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner from Bama, a guy you really liked, Gil, not picked first round tonight. A bit shocking, a guy who maybe after last college football season was projected to be a top 10 pick, and he didn't even go round 1 tonight. Junior Colson, your guy from Michigan, another off-ball linebacker still available. I think that'd be a very nice selection for the Packers. And then the big headliner was Iowa corner Cooper DeJean, where he was not drafted tonight. And there were a lot of opportunities, a lot of teams looking for corners, and Cooper DeJean is still on the board going into Friday. Out of all that, what's kind of the most surprising to you of of all those guys who haven't been picked or have been picked, what's most surprising to you?
Well, I think the Cooper DeJean thing was a surprise. I mean, most experts were saying the Packers would have to trade up if they wanted to get him, and he's still on the board now at, as we're ready to start the second round. So that is a little bit surprising. I think the reason that we didn't see Brian Gutekunst trade down to try to grab somebody, so many quarterbacks and wide receivers went off the board early, and the Packers just like, okay, people falling. We don't need to move because, 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks, that really, and 2 of them going to NFC North teams as well. But I think the board fell in a way that Brian Gutekunst was probably very pleasantly surprised.
7 receivers were picked in round 1 tonight, if I'm counting right. Marvin Harrison Jr. was drafted 4th overall by Arizona. Then you had Malik Neighbors from LSU getting drafted by the New York Giants. Romo Dunes got drafted by the Chicago Bears, the receiver out of Washington. And then Brian Thomas Jr., he went number 23 to LSU. So 4 receivers were picked before the Packers were even on the clock. So you had 4 receivers, you had 6 quarterbacks that got selected. Essentially, the Packers got the 13th overall pick. And then Brock Bowers, he got picked too. So they essentially had the 12th overall pick with guys who they really wanted to focus on: O-line, defense, and it's a board that felt really in favor of Green Bay. And you got to think that if they felt like they could have gotten Jordan Morgan tomorrow, I feel like they would have traded out and they would have traded down. But clearly, Brian Gutekunst was like, "Hey, this is a guy we want. This is a guy we need. We're going to stay put." The Cooper DeJean falling out of round 1, that is definitely the most surprising to me. But he's coming off a broken fibula. Maybe there's some health concerns. There's some issues maybe with the way he plays in coverage, and there could be some. I've heard some stuff where essentially some teams don't think he's twitchy enough or quick enough to handle NFL speed and NFL receivers and such. Projects better as a safety. It's not a very good safety class in general this year. So kind of makes sense. The stars may align for Cooper DeJean to be early second round, maybe a mid second round pick, and maybe the Packers will have a shot on Friday to pick him with their first second round pick.
Yeah, very possible the way this board has fallen. And another interesting thing, the last time the Packers took an offensive lineman in the first round, 2011, Derek Sherrod.
Yeah, and Derek Sherrod, I know a lot of people said, hey, he was a bust. I'm going to give that guy the benefit of the doubt because his rookie year, he was playing pretty well against the Kansas City Chiefs, the year that they almost ran the table during the regular season. It was their only loss of the regular season, and his leg got snapped in half because a defender rolled into him, and he never recovered from that. If I broke my leg, I don't think I'd ever want to stand up and do any exercise ever again. So coming back from that is just such a hurdle in general, and then being asked to still continue to push 300-pound grown men around for your day job. Derek Sherrod, it kind of essentially, I thought that was a decent first-round pick at the time. It just didn't work out because of the freak injury that happened. I think that really set his career back. Let's hope for better things for Jordan Morgan, obviously. Gil, before we get into the top prospects still available for tomorrow and who the Packers are on Friday, we're recording on Thursday, but for Friday, and talk about guys who the Packers may target or who we'd like to see them go after. Maybe there's a lot. They're going to be busy on day 2. Right now, they got 4 picks lined up on day 2, 2 in round 2, 2 in round 3. What was the biggest surprise from round 1 of the draft?
I think some of the quarterbacks that went early, especially, the 5th and 6th quarterbacks off the board. I was just not expecting that, 6 quarterbacks in the first 12.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the 2 quarterbacks you're talking about who went 5th and 6th, well, number 5 was J.J. McCarthy.
Right, who I wasn't that surprised with. Minnesota, we knew Minnesota was going to try to get him.
Correct. And Minnesota, essentially the Giants, there were a lot of reports all week about the Giants wanting to move up for a quarterback and wanting to draft a quarterback. That was just a huge smokescreen to make sure that they got a receiver because clearly they wanted a team like Minnesota to trade up in case the Chargers drafted Malik Neighbors or Romo Dunes or whoever, whatever receiver was available right there. The Chargers ended up going with the offensive tackle from Notre Dame, Joe Alt, who I think is going to be a very good NFL player. It seems like the Chargers are always picking O-linemen in the first round every year, and yet they still can't seem to figure out. But the Giants got their guy. The Vikings didn't really have to move up too high to get
moved up one spot.
moved up one spot to make sure they got JJ McCarthy. But I mean, the big obviously shock of this draft was Atlanta doubling down at quarterback. And
Yes.
Last month they signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year contract with huge guarantees. And then they select Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall. And I know Falcon fans hate it, but they're kind of taking the Packer approach to building the quarterback room.
Exact same thing.
And if Penix works out, man, it's going to be pretty damn smart.
It is. And Penix is a guy who probably needs a couple of years to develop. And yet you wanted that quarterback. But what does that say about Kirk Cousins, really?
Yeah, it says he's getting old. It's a veteran quarterback who's coming off an Achilles injury, and that's the Falcons are trying to cover their butts. They're trying to cover their bases and make sure that they're good to go at quarterback for the foreseeable future. The only problem with Atlanta, the reason why Green Bay can get away with it, because they don't have a de facto owner. Yeah, Mark Murphy runs the show, but they don't have a de facto owner essentially who really runs the ship. Arthur Blank, if you saw the video, Michael Penix Jr. was talking to Arthur Blank. They caught him on camera, and Arthur Blank essentially getting an explanation why the heck is this pick being made. And it could be some excellent theater the next few years, or the Falcons could be the smartest team taking a Green Bay Packer approach, and you may see more teams doing this where the Falcons essentially they're taking a risk. I felt like they could have traded down to select Michael Penix, but if you like a guy, you like a guy. And then the other surprise from day one, too, for me, Gil, was San Francisco picking Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. There's a lot of rumors, and the 49ers, obviously, they are the kryptonite for the Green Bay Packers. They were the one team that could stop the Red Hot Packers last year in the playoffs, and it drove me nuts. It drives every Packer fan nuts that they're the team that always has the thorns that are sticking in our sides always. But there's rumors that their receiver, Brandon Ayuk, who wants a new contract, could be traded. Deebo Samuel could get moved if they end up giving Brandon Ayuk a big contract. Juwan Jennings also set to be a free agent after next year. So if there's issues in the wide receiver room for San Francisco, that could be huge for Green Bay to kind of take that leap and finally get ahead of the 49ers once and for all.
Hey, in the 90s, it was the 49ers and the Cowboys who were always ahead of the Packers, and the Packers couldn't beat the Cowboys ever. They finally beat the 49ers in 95. They win the Super Bowl in 96. It's time. It is time to start beating those 49ers.
I'm hoping for a Brandon Ayuk holdout. I'm hoping Deebo essentially gets moved to running back and doesn't get enough pass at receiver. And I hope Brock Purdy lives up to Mr. Irrelevant status as a quarterback down the road. But the Niners, obviously, very good team. They're the defending NFC champions for a reason. I just hope they take a little step back because I think that'll be enough for the Packers just to leapfrog them a little bit in the NFC. But looking ahead to day 2 on Friday, Gil, some players still available includes, we talked about Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cooper DeJean, Peyton Wilson from NC State, Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker from Texas A&M, Jerzon Newton from Illinois, a D lineman who was an absolute force for the Illini last year, running back Jonathan Brooks from Texas, TJ Tampa, the corner from Iowa State. Packers have the 9th pick overall in the second round tomorrow or on Friday. What do you want to see them do? Who do you want to see them target at that 9th overall pick if they're available?
I would still love to see Cooper DeJean end up in a Packers uniform. I just think that, safety is a thin position. Would it shock me if the Packers try to trade up and grab him in one of the first 3 or 4 picks in the second round? No, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's still on the board. I look at it right now. You still need help at safety. You need linebackers. I don't know if you go linebacker quite yet in the second round, maybe in the third at the earliest. You still need offensive linemen. You still need a cornerback. There are plenty of needs. And edge rusher is a quiet need for this team, especially because of Kingsley Enagbari's health situation. And as much as I like the potential of Lucas Van Ness, he's unproven at this point, and you're making a transition to a new defense that the whole system is going to be different. Maybe you need an edge rusher to sort of give you more depth and maybe someone who is a little more familiar with the type of system that Jeff Hafley is going to run. So a lot of needs here. 4 picks as of right now on Friday. Time to start filling, checking off those boxes, really.
I feel like so Buffalo has the first overall pick in the second round. They traded down twice in the first round to gain some extra picks. They needed they were in salary cap hell. They had to get rid of a lot of really good players from last year's team. I feel like they're going to pick Cooper DeJean first pick tomorrow, or on Friday. I feel like he's going to be the first pick in round 2. They have a huge need in the defensive secondary. They let Micah Hyde walk. They let Jordan Poyer walk. They let Tre'Davious White walk. Cooper DeJean makes sense there. So I think that pipe dream DeJean to Green Bay, I don't think it's going to happen, but I think that's going to start a run of corners, and I think we're going to see a corner go right away for Green Bay with that 9th overall selection in round 2, that 41st overall pick. And you know what? If there is a huge run on corners, let's get Bo Melton's little brother, Max Melton.
I'd love it.
I would love that. Bo Melton's an athlete, and if Max Melton is as much of an athlete as his brother Bo, hey man, Bo's a big play. Bo. Take it to the max with Max Melton, man. I would be all for Max Melton and a brothers reunion in Green Bay. We got in Milwaukee. We got the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo and his younger brother Thanasis. How about the Melton Bros in Green Bay?
There you go. Either that or we could drink the Kool-Aid, right?
That too. But I just, it all depends how the board falls. I feel like the Packers too could get an off-ball linebacker with their second round pick, whether it's a Peyton Wilson or an Edgerrin Cooper or a Junior Colson. I feel like there's going to be some options there, and maybe they move around if we see more receivers getting drafted, or we see a quarterback like a Spencer Rattler somehow get picked early on during round 2 somehow. I think he's going to be a round 3 pick, but if we see some guys essentially getting drafted where the Packers, they're not even on the board, you may see them trade down, stash some extra picks like Brian Gutekunst has always wanted, and draft some guys later than expected.
Always possible. Look, I would love a run on wide receivers right now. I would absolutely love that, because that just means more players that the Packers are probably interested in drafting will be falling. Draft 3 tight ends. That'd be great too.
Yeah. And I think that could be a sneaky thing outside of edge. I think an H-back, a tight end who could fill that H-back role could be very sneaky. I love Tucker Kraft. I love Luke Musgrave. I don't love them in the H-back role. I love the roles that they're playing right now. That could be a sneaky need. It's something that you need to find your Kyle Juszczyk, essentially, to really help this Packer offense take another step and take it to the next level. Gil, obviously, busy time this week. The NFL draft finally here. What do you have online for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV? I got to imagine you're going to have some draft recaps and possibly some previews maybe for the final 2 days of the draft too.
Yeah, well, for Packers Post, I'll have an article up on Friday morning about 10 things we learned from day 1 of the draft by the Packers, and where this team, a little bit more about Jordan Morgan, a little bit more about what it means in the big picture. And then Cheesehead TV, some outstanding coverage of every Packers draft pick coming up this weekend. So a lot of draft stuff coming your way on Cheesehead.
I'm going to make it simple. I think the Jordan Morgan pick, I learned if the Packers could have 5 Elton Jenkins starting along that offensive lineman, 5 Elton Jenkins, Zach Thompson along that offensive line, that's what they always will strive for.
Sign me up. I'd take it in a heartbeat. I would take it in a heartbeat.
And I can't wait. Day 2 is on Friday, and we're going to have an episode that airs on Saturday morning, recapping rounds 2 and 3. 4 picks lined up for the Green Bay Packers for rounds 2 and 3. Looking forward to reuniting, Gil, pretty soon.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And tomorrow or Friday, by the time this drops, should be a really big day for the Green Bay Packers, whether it's making those 4 picks, trading up, trading down. It will not be dull. Let's put it that way.
Nope, it will not. And I can't wait.
Definitely can't wait. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us for today. We'll be right back here tomorrow. Follow us on Twitter at Bill Packers and at GBPackersSean to stay up to date on all the Packers, or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. And thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.